Good evening everyone, and welcome to tonight's executive committee meeting. I don't think we have any members of the public, so I don't think we need any introduction.
We might have 5,000 people watching this on live stream.
Forgive me, yeah, I did forget. So yeah, my name is Asjan Mahmood. I'm leader of Pendlebury Council and chairman of the executive committee. I will do an introduction to my left hand side.
Okay. Good evening also, I'm Philip Spur, Director of Place.
Good evening, Damon Lawrence, Interim Director of Resources.
Gemma Louise Wells, Head of Finance.
Dorothy Lord, Councillor in Waterside and also lead on community safety.
Councillor Tom Whip, I'm Executive Member for Planning and Regulatory Services.
David Whip, I'm Executive Member for Resources.
Councillor Zafar Ali, Councillor for Briarfield East in Clover Hill, Executive Member for Environment and Climate Change.
Councillor Hanif from Briarfield and Relay, responsible for leisure services.
Councillor Mohammed Iqbal, responsible for housing, health and wellbeing.
Good evening, David Walker, Assistant Director for Operational Services.
Good evening, Iqbal Bakari, Head of Economic Growth.
Hi, Neil Watson, Assistant Director for Planning.
Jane Watson, Democratic Services Manager.
Howard Culshaw, Head of Legal and Democratic Services.
We've nobody's.
You're very important.
A lot of executive members. Councillor Martin Stone, also not an executive member.
Thank you everyone. The first item on the agenda is a declaration of interest.
None.
Apologies. I've just got apology from the Chief Exec. She's on annual leave this week, so therefore she's not here for that reason. I'll take public question time first. No members of the public, so no, that's fine. Minutes.
Can I move them?
That's brilliant. I'm just going to mention about the staff survey that we have done recently. A total of 66% of staff responded to the 2024 employee survey, with the majority of answers being significantly more positive than in previous years. 3 in 4 employees feel the council is a good organisation to work for, which is up on 2022, with a flexible work-life balance being the main reason. Flexible working is more important than anything else to staff, and this is followed by a good working relationship with colleagues, the work itself and the level of pay. Job satisfaction is up, with this being higher amongst line managers. Views on learning and development is up, with the comments from survey, including my line manager encourages my training and development, and I get the training to do my job well. Almost 90% of those who took part in the survey said the council provides a safe environment in which to work, and they have the flexibility to balance responsibilities at home and work, and over 80% know where to go for health and well-being support. All statements relating to line management are up significantly on 2022, with staff commenting that they are responded to positively when putting forward ideas, and they are recognised for a job well done. Views of fairness and consistency of heads of service are up compared to 2022, with staff agreeing they are approachable, visible, fair and consistent. But despite the positives, there have been no change in how likely staff are to recommend working at the council. There are still significantly more detractors than promoters, with the main issues relating to pay, workload and general outlook of the sector. The main concern for all staff, including line managers and heads of service, is having enough time to do their job well, putting this down to the amount of work, resources and lack of staff, which I think we're working on trying to improve right across board. The other thing is the improving communications across the organisation is to be looked at, with suggestions from staff including improving communications between teams, increased cross-departmental working, managers need to speak with each other more, improve staff briefings, listens to staff more, and act on feedback and increase staff engagement. A total of 94 staff made comments when asked what they would change about working at Pendlebury Council. The most common thing were better IT systems, office spaces, more staff and better pay. And I just want to, if it can be mentioned, a very big thank you to all the staff and all the senior management for all their hard work and efforts and everything they do as a council to improve quality of life for local people. The next item is corporate plan. So this is yeah, I was going to say the corporate plan. So this is just to kind of inform the give us a bit of an update on the 2024-25 plan. It has key points within the plan, and I think Councillor Whip probably will pick some of these up. I'll come back in shortly. Councillor Whip.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not clear whether this is going to the council or this is an executive function. If it's the latter, I'll go into some detail.
Going to council.
I think it is about council. I can ask.
Well, yeah, Chair, it is a council document because it was approved by the council, but I suppose it's coming in for comment, discussion. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, well, Chairman, there was a hiatus last year when it got knocked back several times by councillors across the spectrum, really. So I think it's important that we dot the I's across the T's. Can I start on page 1?
Yep.
The second set of points there, the bottom one is implement actions from the enforcement review, and I'm not clear that we've actually seen any outcomes from said review, so we could do with looking at that before we start implementing stuff that we don't necessarily agree with. So that wants rewriting to reflect that we need to consider the outcome of that rather than implementation.
Okay, yeah.
Similarly, under governance, the first bullet point there, it says implement the actions from the best value review by external audit. Again, we haven't seen that, so swap implement for consider. At the bottom of the page there, the suggestion is this is all, we're going to be discussing this later in the meeting, but I think it needs a further bullet point which says something like getting the county council to stump up for the huge costs, and we can return to that later in the meeting, but essentially they're cost fronting many millions of pounds of expenditure onto Pendle Council. So I think part of the corporate plan is ensuring that we get the county council to get their hand in the pocket elsewhere in Dickie's Meadow. On the next page, Chairman, the climate emergency, one of the middle bullet points, it says continue to deliver electric vehicle charging schemes, and there's a target date of 31st of March 2025. Well, Councillor Tom Whip will remind people that he came forward with a single charging point proposal which the previous administration knocked back, and we are still at a point where we haven't implemented any EV charging schemes in the car parks. So continue is a bit of a stretch of the imagination, and we won't actually implement some before 31st of March 2025. So I think that needs rewriting. Under community safety, the second bullet point there, relaunch the domestic abuse forum, and there's quite a bit of word in there. I just want to insert something to say that we need to be clear with partners that this is what everybody wants to do. So it's working with partners, something like that. And then under bereavement services, and this is something that we put into the shared administration agreement, it's a further bullet point. It's review cemetery services with a view to making them financially viable. So it's a review of how we make them financially sustainable. And then over the page again, UK Shared Prosperity Fund, there's an omission, it should say implement schemes in Bonalswick and Earby, because that's the case. There's reference to Briarfield, but Chairman, the intention of the shared administration was that these were the first phases of further work. Now, because of the county deal, the funding is being taken away from Pendle Council. It's going to be the county council responsibility. But I think if we put a further bullet point in there to plan further phases, and then a further bullet point to seek funding support from the county deal for continued work. The wording might not just be bob on, but that sort of thing. And then a further bullet point this is development control, and I don't know whether it sits properly in here, but the new arrangements for timely decision taking are going to have an impact, and so we want a priority in there that says develop systems to ensure timely development control decisions. It'll sit somewhere there anyway. And then final page, Chairman, the top section there, indoor leisure review. I think there are 3 further bullet points. One is complete phase 1 of the refurbishment programme, which is currently underway and we funded earlier this year. Second bullet point is plan/implement energy saving schemes. And then the third one, Chairman, is review operational management of the leisure centres. And then finally, Chairman, under health and wellbeing, a further bullet point, seek to encourage health providers to deliver a health centre in Bonalswick. And I think, Chairman, that encompasses the updated shared administration agreement. I'm not sure we've captured every single thing, but it sort of does most of it anyway. I might have missed 1 or 2 points.
Thank you very much. Any further comments from you? I would just like to make one comment on the priority 2. I think there needs to be some mention of like community cohesion. This happened previously, went back about 50 years ago in the previous government, but has kind of lasted a little bit over the last couple of years. I think there is an element that I think we need to, I think something that we need to look at and help to, it's an area that we need to look at and probably make some progress, trying to have better links and community cohesion within Pendle.
So is it something like create a renewed strategy for community cohesion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's all. Yeah.
Chairman, I have found another one which I omitted, dear to your heart, and it's to include in that section of health and well-being, perhaps, but it's continued to press for an equitable distribution of DFG funding in Lancashire.
Oh, yes. Yeah. That's a big item. I'm sure the new portfolio holder will get this up and run with it, really.
Chair,
Okay,
can we just clarify one point?
Yeah, one second. So we've got a second over there. I'll be second though. All those in favour of that, and then I'll bring you.
Or do you want to speak first?
It was just a point of clarity that when we've got deadline dates that are at the end of March, that's probably why you will get some reports coming through to exec.
Yeah.
Then there'll be an implementation plan. But we have to, at the start of the year, talk about what key actions we will deliver by the end of the year, 31st of March. So it's about timing. So that was just the clarity point.
Thank you. Further comments? No. All those in favour? Next item is self-build and customs have to register, introduction of registration fee.
Yeah, can I just ask a question on page 2.6? It talks about the total number of entries on registry is 281. Are we able to quantify, are all those local entries or is there some regional people as well?
The majority are relatively local, yeah, in and around the Pendle area and just outside.
So in terms of the criteria that you're proposing, Neil, in terms of the local eligibility conditions, the bulk of that 281 will qualify under those 3 points, will they?
Thank you. Okay, all those in favour? It's carried. Next item is management of waste and materials. Yeah, do you want to?
Certainly, Chair, yeah.
Do you want to come in? Yeah.
Thank you.
No.
So the report provides an update, Chair, on the actions taken from the previous report presented to Committee in July 2023. Paragraphs 1 to 3 really set out the background and the reasons why we're seeking alternative arrangements for the handling of our waste materials. But in summary, the agreement between Lancashire County Council and their current provider, Suez, are ending in April 2025 and April 2026. Paragraph 7 in the report really sets out the key assumptions from the senior officers of county councils and the districts that are met, and in basically it's the responsibility of each waste collection authority to provide its own facilities or deliver into facilities provided by the county council, which will be Leyland and Farrington as a later date. Paragraph 9, I set out the actions that we have concluded since the last time I presented a report here, and basically there was the identification of the site for development, the consultant's opinion on the possibility of development in relation to permitting of the site, a quotation from Suez, which is the county council's provider, to enter into a direct agreement with them, and obviously the continued lobbying of the county council at all levels to get them to obviously extend the agreements or support us in other ways. Report also sets out the options of not taking any actions, and ultimately it's a move that we will transport waste to Winier up until 2026, and then from 2026, first of 2026, it will be then to transport to Leyland. There are financial implications, obviously, and in paragraph 27 I show a table which highlights each one of those options with capital and revenue costs. Paragraph 28 starts to provide the officer's recommendation, and which is basically to consider redevelopment of Fleet Street Depot to create facilities that would accept both recycling and non-recycling streams for the borough. And paragraph 29 expands on that in recommending that it's the most cost-effective position for ourselves would be to work with Burnley Borough Council and investigate further the development of a joint facility that would be used by both boroughs in the future. I think, as I say, the recommendations consider the development period being 24 to 27 months. There's obviously a list of recommendations within the report around transferring waste to Winhill, transferring waste beyond to Leyland, and requiring increased revenue budgets when facilities are open, and pursuance of consultants to assist us in the development process.
Thank you, David. Yeah, I mean, this is a big item. We've got limited time to implement the changes that we've been asked by Lancashire County Council, and the big financial implications of that. And looking at this, obviously we've got Fleet Street is probably going to be of a preferred site, because I think we were looking at Regent Street at one point, but that is no longer available on the market. So ideally, preferentially, it would be better to work with Burnley to have like a joint working, and that would be more cost effective for both of us and more sustainable. But we'll look at all the options and keep our options open, and we need to proceed pretty quickly again to implement the changes that we are required to do. Councillor Zafar.
Thank you, Leader. Yeah, I agree, and I'm grateful to David coming to the meeting tonight and setting out the situation as it is. And as you've quite rightly pointed out, there's not a lot of options given the time constraints and of course the financial constraints as well. The report is very clear in terms of what should be done, or if what isn't done, and what the effect of that may well be. Ultimately, the site at Fleet Street, again, I'm not an expert on this, of course David is the expert, the officer leading the charge on that, but the site itself would, in my view, be practical. It already has a footprint of of waste management to some extent. It's quite a vast site, and of course there'll be aspects of planning that will be brought into the mix of things. But you're right in stating that the preferred option would be to develop the site with Burnley. It would mean it would cost Pendle Council less, and it'd be more cost effective as well. And I think that's what the overall view on things. The other options, in my view and my assessment of the report from David, are simply not financially viable. We are stuck in this position given Lancashire County Council's sort of closed shop approach. And I think it's our job to make those decisions to try and get us into the future, with less of these sort of problems. Because ultimately, where else will our waste go if we can't afford to move it on to Leyland? So I'm more than happy, Chairman, through yourself, to move the recommendations as set out to allow our officers and the waste services team to crack on and start setting the balls in motion in trying to achieve our future objectives in this area.
Thank you. Councillor Wick.
I will very, very unhappily second that, but I want to add a bit on, which is that we make further strong representations at member level with the leader of the county council to strongly request that the county council does not cost shunt and that they support residents in Pendle in funding these changes. And Councillor Ali referred to none of the options to cart waste to Leyland or other places are viable. Well, unfortunately, given the constraints that Pendle Council has on resources, the cheapest option isn't financially viable because it's going to drive us into the rungs of the local government bankruptcy. And if Pendle Council is having to spend £600,000 a year that's going to be £600,000 a year that has to be carved out of somewhere else, because there's a ceiling on the income that we can raise, and there's no give in the system. So it's not going to be straightforward actually financing this. I think it's an absolute requirement for the County Council to put funding into this, not to cost shunt hundreds of thousands of pounds onto Pendle Council, more or less at the drop of a hat. And I think the argument is very, very strong. We've seen before how the County Council have supported other district councils in setting up waste transfer stations, and that is not being offered to the people in East Lancashire, who were probably hardest hit with austerity and least able to afford these extreme costs. In terms of the capital, I mean, we've got two figures here, one for a joint facility with taking Burnley with us, which is over £2.2 million, and if it's a sole say just Pendle, it comes down to just over 1.5 million. Both huge sums of money, and then the revenue cost, which is a real killer. You're looking at best part of £600,000 a year, maybe £300,000 a year. Huge sums that we just do not have. So, Chairman, it is with great sorrow that I second the proposal, but legally, we are the collection authority, County Council the disposal authority. They lay down, you shall tip off at this point here, in whatever shape or form they determine. They've got all the cards. I just hope they've got a bit of charity, because they are really stiffing residents in Pendle with these exorbitant costs, and it's just not on. We've got to battle this every inch of the way.
Totally agree with you, Councillor. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, David, as others have said, a very good, clear report. I would echo the frustration of the executive on this issue and the lack of support from LCC. I did have a question through you, Chair, if I could ask Damon perhaps. In relation to in the implications section, it says capital of 5 million has been set aside. Well, that's considerably more than the figure in David's options. And my second question relating to that is, I didn't think we had capital headroom of that amount anyway. What are the implications of that figure being set aside?
Through you, Chair. Do you want me to respond?
Any further comments, or
I think we'll hear the answer and then. I think first of all, the figure was set aside, Chair, when we set the budget back in February. There's been a lot of analysis that David and his team have done since then. As you know, when we set the budget, we have to look at the potential headroom, look at the potential for the capital financing requirements. When are we going to repay debt? We've got a forecast spend. So that was all in the budget report, that I said that actually the headroom had actually moved. So that was quite clear in the report. However, what it did say is that we're near the ceiling and not far from it, and therefore we would have to monitor the capital financing requirements as part of our capital programme monitoring on a quarterly basis and our treasury management position. So now that we are getting to a point where we've got some firmer costings, then you will see a detailed analysis come probably back to the executive, which will actually show the impact on borrowing and capital financing. At the time we set the capital programme back in February, we were just unclear of whether or not the county were going to come to the table. We had to put an estimate in, and that was the state at that time. Okay.
Councillor Storm?
So, thank you. So, to be clear, that 5 million was the estimate at the time, and we are still just about under the maximum permitted headroom.
At the time of the budget, we're actually just undertaking a review of the capital programme. It actually came through yesterday. So we're just doing a revision of that capital financing requirements, and an update will be coming to executive along with the out-term position for 23-24. And that's likely to be at the August executive.
Thank you.
Councillor Lee?
Yeah, I think it's a really difficult read, is this report, and really challenging for the executive and the council. But just in terms of speaking to LCC again, through you, Leader, could I just ask Mr Walker, in terms of the discussions we've had so far with LCC, and other councils are obviously speaking to LCC as well, my own view is, I don't think we're going to budge, but where are we in terms of them discussions? Can you foresee any potential for some movement from their current position? They seem to be sticking to it.
Through you, Chair. Discussions have been open and held at all levels in relation to whether the county council will move and offer any support. There are, I would say, some conversations taking place around our movement and potentially some support that may be offered as we move down the path that we're suggesting. I can't say that it's official or in stone, but I'm happy to say that they are starting to talk to us. So that's the most I can report at this moment in time.
Thank you.
Councillor Whip?
Yes, Chairman. Just coming back to Martin's questions. At the time of the budget, one of the options was looking to purchase a site, which would obviously have added to the capital cost. The other thing to take into account is that if we're enhancing, expanding the estate, then our asset base grows, so the borrowing can grow with that as well. The point I would reiterate is that we really can't afford to do it, even though we might be able to afford to borrow. You've still got to pay back your borrowing, and that is going to hit us hard, never mind the additional operational costs of us operating a waste transfer station as opposed to the county council paying for that facility.
Okay, all those in favour? That's carried. Next item is the domestic weekly food waste collections. Councillor Zafar.
Sorry, domestic food waste again. Am I right to bring David back in on that one as well?
David?
I'll bring him comment at the end.
On the food waste, yeah.
Through you, Chair, yes. So, sorry, the report, paragraphs 1 and 2 provide the background to the report. And it's basically the need to introduce weekly food waste collections was set out in the Environment Act of 2021. And it introduces changes to waste collection services so that recyclable household waste, which includes food waste, had to be collected separately from other household waste. The Act stated that the frequency for food waste was to be weekly collection. And paragraph 4 sets out the County Council's position in relation to disposal. Linking back to the previous report, there will be no facilities for food waste provided by the County Council, so each authority will be expected to deliver to Farrington, and there are no options being considered locally for disposal. Paragraph 5 shows the figures we've been awarded by DEFRA, which is 793,377, and the proposals are this funding will be spent on vehicles, carries and communal bins. Paragraph 6 advises that we have requested DEFRA review our allocation as we feel it's insufficient to introduce weekly collections, but at this moment in time we're still awaiting DEFRA's response for that request for review. In paragraph 12 I set out that we have in total just over £1 million of funding for the scheme, and that's created by the DEFRA funding and Pendle's own capital commitment. In paragraph 13, I'm advising we have no information on transitional or new burden funding, which is obviously the risk for us at this moment in time. So the purpose of the report is to seek members' approval to start procurement process for vehicles, bins and caddies. The reason for this being that the vehicles are currently taking 12 months to be delivered. Caddies at the moment are taking 10 weeks, but both delivery order to delivery times are expected to rise. Manufacturers, when you speak to them, are advising production slots will be taken up as we move closer to their delivery deadlines, which is going to create a risk that even if we're looking beyond the UK for suppliers, we're not going to have equipment in place to commence the new scheme from the 1st of April 2026. So in paragraph 19 I set out the recommendations, and that's been to recommend that the complete tendering exercises for vehicles, caddies and the delivery prior to information on new burdens funding being provided from DEFRA, because without doing so there is a greater risk of us being unable to meet the government's 1st of April 26 deadline. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zafran.
Thank you, Chairman, and once again thank you, David, for setting out the flavour of the report. And it feels a bit like deja vu, similarly to the previous report, in terms of the complications and of course the financial issues that we're going to be faced with, given this requirement for weekly food waste collections, and of course the dire strait of the council's finances. Ultimately, the recommendations are set out, in my view. I don't think there's anything other than those recommendations that we could probably look to investigate given the time constraints. I'm just mindful, however, Chairman, we do have a general election on the card, which is literally around the corner. I don't know if there is to be a change of government, would that bring a change of government policy around the requirement as set out? Because clearly the financial impact and the financial burden of such an initiative is probably not just going to affect us, it's going to affect hundreds of councils up and down the country. So will that, will if there is a new government, will that basically play on their sort of radar in terms of easing and alleviating the financial impact on councils already burdened with decades of austerity? So I don't know, in terms of the recommendations, could we add in a subject to paragraph just to basically say, could we have a further report kindly from David, maybe say around August exec, in terms of whether or not there has been a change, whether or not there's any further flexibility and or further information from DEFRA in terms of the funding rather, and the shortage that we feel that we should probably try to achieve, just shy of £200,000, so maybe there might be some further developments. So whilst I'm more than happy to do the recommendations, Chair, can I suggest the additional paragraph on that?
Sure. Yeah. That's fine. Any further? Have a seconder? Councillor David Whip.
I'm going to sound like a broken record, but again, this is a cost that residents in Pendle just literally cannot afford. The revenue cost of doing this is £900,000 a year. So take that together with the waste transfer costs that we're considering the earlier item. I mean, it's a double whammy which Pendle will not recover from. You know, we are being delivered a knockout blow here, and all other financial predicaments pale into insignificance. Now, I'm very much in favour of collecting food waste. If you remember, some people with longer memories and who've been here longer, we actually introduced a pilot food waste collection scheme, which wasn't for the whole of the borough, but for most of the tourist houses in the borough. And we ran that, I think, successfully for some time, but the cost of doing so became unaffordable, and it had to be knocked on the head. So you know, it's environmentally it's a sound thing to do, but financially it's another thing that we cannot afford. So, you know, the government do need to come through with the funding to actually operate the systems. And whether it's a Tory government, a Labour government, a government of many colours, I don't give a monkeys, to be honest. It just doesn't want to fall at the cost of residents of Pendle. It cannot. So, Chairman, I support the proposal, the addition of the caveat there, see whether we can get any further advantage, and see whether the legislation is going to be enacted to the full. But I frankly, I don't see any potential change there. So, yeah, Chairman, I'm sorry I'm being sort of doom and gloom, but it is not a happy time, really.
Yeah, Chairman, whilst I understand what both Councillors Zaffarelli and David Whip are saying, I think this might be an opportunity, though, that we're not the only council that are in this predicament. No doubt there are hundreds across the country. And whether we utilise our resources through Lancashire leaders, and if need be through the LGA, to lobby whichever government comes into power, because obviously there's a DEFRA review, as David has said. We don't know what the outcome of that will be, but I think there's some work to be done on a national basis by all councils, and obviously we were part of the District Councils network as well, that feeds back into either Keir Starmer or Rishi Sunak to say, look, in principle, yeah, we're all happy with this, but somebody needs to cough up the money, and it can't be residents of Pendle or Burnley or any other council across the country. So whilst we asked David to go away and do some of the work, that's all good and well, but I think there needs to be some political lobbying elsewhere that says the government coughs up, and I think if government then faced with a cost of a bill of billions to local councils, I think the likelihood is whichever government comes into power, they might just knock it on the head.
That's a fair comment. Any Councillor Conway?
Thanks, Chair. Fundamentally, I think that the cost of dealing with waste should be paid by the consumer at the point of purchase. I mean, it's pretty clear if you buy something with plastic product packaging, that's going to need to be thrown in the bin, transferred somewhere and dealt with, and that should be all included with the cost of the purchase, and then paid to councils to dispose of it properly. So I do think, I agree with Councillor Iqbal, we should be lobbying through LGAs, etc., to see a proper progressive tax on those materials which do need to be disposed of, and that sort of VAT would then pay for this sort of service.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, as a leader, I've been trying to lobby through the district leaders and Lancashire County Council, trying to even get like a one-off capital payment and any help towards the revenue costs. But it's falling on deaf ears, to be honest with you, at the moment. But we can continue to kind of knock on the door, both with the LGA and LCC, and try to lobby as much as we can. All those in favour? So the next item is Pendle Rise Shopping Centre acquisition. So this is basically an update on the acquisition of Pendle Rise. This is part of the Nelson Town deal. There are negotiations that have taken place with the owner, and currently we are in the process of purchasing that site. Our legal department and Mr. Asjar, who is the owner, his department are kind of doing all the legal paperwork, and we're hoping to have the conclusion within the next couple of weeks. The key thing is within this report is that we will continue with the CPO, because we need to tidy up and some of the issues like highways and you've got the network, mobile network antennas there, that kind of thing. So we need to tidy all that kind of thing up, and the main interest. And I think the CPO itself, the paperwork is already at very advanced stages, and that will be submitted within the next month or two. and I'm happy to move the recommendation as set out within the report.
Second that.
Okay. All those in favour? Thank you. Next item is the update on the Colne Levelling Up projects. Possibly.
Well, Chairman, frankly flabbergasted at this report. I've said from the get-go that the Levelling Up Fund scheme in Colne was grossly underfunded. This council, under its previous administration, bid for £6.5 million. The average allocation during that round one funding was £16.5 million, and we really ought to have been bidding for £16.5 million, because wherever I look within the Colne schemes, I see that there was inadequate consideration of what the true costs of these projects would be, and obviously I've been more closely involved with the Market Hall scheme, where that project is hamstrung by inadequate funding, and we now find that the Muni is costing something like £500,000 more than had been planned and budgeted for, and with the condition survey prior to bidding, it would have been possible to anticipate those increased costs. But anybody actually started work on an old building would sort of like put a finger in the air and add quite a bit in, on the basis that things always cost more than what you expect. You work on your old house, they always cost more than you expect, and old buildings are the same throughout. So in here, Mr. Chairman, we've got a litany of additional costs, and we've started, so we'll finish, and we've got to finish. But if we hadn't been constrained by that ridiculously low bid in the first place, then the whole of these schemes could have been properly budgeted for, and the funding there in place to actually do some of the structural work and some of the repairs that are detailed here, which have come in well in excess of what was in the budget in the first place. So I'm not best pleased, and I think there are a whole series of questions, and I'm sure other councillors will want to probe on those. But Chairman, we do need to complete this work, and I think that we need to approve the overspend on the projects, and I think in terms of the options that we have to get our hand in our pocket and find the funding to actually, so I'm just looking for the relevant option. I think it's option 2, where we actually dip into Pendle Council's resources in order to see that the works are completed as envisaged when this began. But I think, Chairman, going back to the original point, the initial proposals for this were grossly underestimated, and I refer to Market Hall as well, because that is nip and tuck away from not being able to deliver everything that we would require to actually meet the outputs of the levelling up funding. So, Chairman, I would propose that it is, we do agree the overspend, and that the option 2 to complete the work as originally envisaged.
Councillor Lord.
I'll second that, Chair. And just to say I absolutely agree with Councillor Whip. I think from the start, the previous administration rushed into this, hadn't thought it out, this is where we're at. Outside the Muni, on the railings, there's a big banner that says a bit more drama, and this is what they're referring to. Now in a few weeks' time it might say a lot more drama, you know, and I feel embarrassed about it. It's in my town where I live, where I've lived for a lot of years, and it is in danger of becoming an embarrassing project, you know, and everybody's so frustrated about it. I agree with David strongly, and I'm sure other people here will agree. We need to find that funding. We can't just let it go. We can't be in a position where the work can't be completed and the building's left empty. You know, that building is so well used, and people come from far and wide to see the shows that they put on there, and it would be a great shame. So we need to have some planning now as to where this money will come from. Have we got this money? You know, if we haven't, we need to find something, but we can't just leave it as it is. It would be a massive shame and a total embarrassment.
Yeah, before I speak, Chairman, can I just ask through you, where is this money coming from? They haven't got a magic pot somewhere.
No, we will have to borrow. It says in there that the cost of borrowing is such, as illustrated in the report. We're looking at financing through borrowing. That's the route that we'll be looking at. Now, we have, because we have got surplus funds in our reserves, it may be that we can internally borrow. So there's an exercise going on that we have to forecast the capital programme spend profile to see how we use our internal reserves rather than externally borrowing. So we might not incur external borrowing costs at this moment in time, but once we've done the closure of accounts, which is for 23-24, which is due at the end of June, then we will be reforecasting and calculating what that capital programme is. As I said earlier, for the August executive, you will see a full treasury management profile, a borrowing profile, and the existing capital programme. But as councillors have said, we have an overspend that's been incurred that has to be financed. The option is only on certain work that's still to be financed, and that to be financed is in Appendix B, 276k. So it's not a case of being optional on the overspend. We have to finance that overspend through internal borrowing at this moment in time.
So can you just clarify then? So the overspend is circa 400 and odd thousand.
Yes.
And then there's this additional amount to finish if we want to do a proper job, just using Councillor Lord's comment.
Yes.
So we're looking at around 700,000 to finish it.
Yes.
Now, assuming that the underspend isn't £700,000 in August, and you have to go out to external borrowing, ultimately that could rise above £1 million then, couldn't it, long term? If you need to go borrow £700,000 to finish a job off externally, how much extra will it cost the council?
No, what we're saying is that we don't believe that that will be the case. Like in paragraph 24, internal costs of borrowing should be noted here. We think we will be internally borrowing. However, in the event that we will externally borrow, it'll be 25k for every 500k.
spend.
Okay.
Now that's year on year until you've repaid it.
Yeah.
So it's how long you will do that, and that's the exercise that we have to do. There are a number of issues that have been presented to us, the waste issues earlier, this issue, community that's arisen over the last month, that we are profiling now into our capital programme, and a report will come back stating what the position is.
Chairman, I am concerned that in terms of the overspend, how we managed to allow it to get that far. I mean, there needs to be some responsibility on a political level, maybe not from this administration, but from the previous administration led by Councillor Nadeem Ahmed, that where this overspend has been authorised, and I mean, I obviously rejoined the executive now, but unless colleagues can correct me, I'm not sure whether last year or the year before that overspend was authorised by political members. If it was, that's fine. If it wasn't, then I'd certainly welcome some sort of private briefing outside the public arena in terms of how on earth this has managed to get to this stage. And I agree with Councillor Lord that we can't have, for example, the Muni left in a semi-finished state, because the Muni is the jewel in the crown for Pendle. There always has been, and hopefully always will be. But £500,000 and counting is a lot of money for Pendle taxpayers, and just coupled with some of the other two items that we looked at, I think we'll be bankrupt at this rate before we even know it, before the Muni's even finished. So I know Councillor Whip's got his hand up and maybe he can help me, but if political oversight hasn't been done into this, then why not, is my question.
Councillor Lee.
Well, Chairman, when I became aware that we had this overspend issue, I learned that the reporting of these projects was to the Colne and District Committee. So Colne and District Committee have been receiving reports on a monthly basis. I don't think that the overspend was reported, because I don't think our officers were aware that there was an overspend of this nature. But certainly Colne and District don't seem to have had a grip of this, and I think if we'd have been setting this up ourselves in the first place, the reporting processes would have been somewhat different to what we have, or what we have had. This is the first time that the executive has had sight of this.
Absolutely. I'm just going to comment, but Philip was coming. So.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of points very, very briefly. So yes, reports have been given on a monthly basis to Colne Area Committee, but to be entirely clear, those reports have actually reported to the Area Committee. Everybody was looking to underspend, so I need to make that point very, very clear. So it's only very recently this situation has come to light. It is more than unfortunate. It's a very, very challenging, very difficult situation. There will be an internal investigation undertaken. Audit have been appointed to look at this. So that investigation will obviously run its course, and then we'll feedback on the outcome of that in due course. But yes, very difficult, very challenging situation. But just to confirm, Colne Area Committee were told the project was delivering within budget, because that was the information officers had until very, very, very recently.
Thank you for the clarification.
Can I just come back?
Sure, yeah.
I mean, I'm even more comfortable now in terms of supporting the overspend, because if Colne Area Committee have been reported that there's an underspend, how on earth has it suddenly gone to an overspend of £500,000? I mean, you know, colleagues may well want to move on this, but I'm not going to support it because I'm not comfortable at all.
Yeah. Come back to Councillor Arnold.
Chair, this is a serious point, is it not? And my name's been mentioned in some of the discussions, and points have been made about the previous administration. So I think what we actually need is, I think there isn't the evidence there. I think people are jumping the gun. There's one or two people have mentioned my name, so this is the reason why I want to speak up. I think we're quite quick to jump on the bandwagon. You see reports like this, and members, not in this just particularly this meeting, but other meetings as well, have made some very serious accusations and political points. And I think without the evidence base in front of people, without a full review it's very difficult to decide. I could sit here and well say, hindsight's a great thing, and Councillor Wick mentioned, oh, we only bid for 6.5 million. I think we need to look at why we bid for 6.5 million, what was the reason behind it, and what advice were members offered at that particular point. Number one. Number two, in terms of the overspend, I could sit here and say, well, the current administration, you guys have been running the council for the previous 12, 13 months. Why were you not aware of this at an earlier stage? But I don't think that really helps the discussion and the debate. I think it's quite childish to simply just accuse people and name people. So I think let's go back to the drawing board, so to speak. Let's look into what's happened and where the decisions have taken place and what's really happened, and learn lessons from it, so we move forward to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Councillor
Chairman, I fully agree with Councillor Ahmed. You know, there needs to be a root and branch examination of how we've got to this position. There are two things in terms of the spending at the Muni, and first of all is that the overspend has been spent. The contractors have done the work, and that work needs to be funded. So I don't think there's any option, unless we, you know, sort of default on payments, which I don't think we ought to be doing. The discretion is for the finishing touches. Well, they're a bit more than finishing touches, but if you look at Appendix B, there is the possibility of using shabby, water-stained, damaged doors and things like that to put them back in. So you spend a small fortune on the building to renovate it, and then you do not finish it off with the new things which you really should be doing. And you know, you're looking at chair stands damaged due to flooding in basement from defective heating pipes, and you know, sort of not renewing them, but you know, getting them powder coated and things like that. I mean, these are the things which people will notice, because they'll go in and they'll say, well, you spent how much money on this, but look, these seats are all damaged, those doors are all water stained, the curtains are rubbish, etc, etc, etc. So what I proposed was that, you know, we bite the bullet. I don't think there's any room for manoeuvre on the existing overspend. The only room for manoeuvre is on the decorative aspects, or the you know, refurbishing or renewing the furniture, which to my mind needs to be done. Else people will walk in and just see a shabby Muni, because that's what is visible. All the structural work that's been done is hidden. So, Chairman, I think we have got to do that job. I think we owe it to Colm, we owe it to the Muni. It's unfortunate that...
To Pendle.
Well, to Pendle. And it's unfortunate that we're in this position, and the point I was making previously was that if Pendle Council had got 16.5 million, and this is coming away from the Muni, but looking at the market hall, the first plans for the market hall was like a £12 million scheme, and you know, sort of, how on earth was that going to be afforded from a £6.5 million pot that expected to do all these other things as well? So if, you know, there'd been some thought applied at the beginning, there would have been a reasonable amount of funding to actually deliver the super duper schemes. Unfortunately, we're working within an envelope which is far less than we should have. Chairman, my proposal is that we go for the option 2, I think if we're not able to do that, then we need to find ways and means of achieving the proper finish rather than having a shabby, shoddy job. And I do hope that colleagues will support us one way or another in getting a Muni that we can all be proud of.
Councillor Ahmed.
Yeah, just very briefly, from recollection, I think in terms of the timescales, were very, very challenging to put the bids in at the time, and I think our officers did really well to get something together in the really demanding and challenging time that was allowed to put in the bids and the amount of work that involved, as usually is the case with these sorts of things. But I think it's also unfortunate that in the discussion there's been no mention of something a bit more positive in terms of the little theatre and the hippodrome. I mean, I know the report itself, majority of it in terms of the municipal hall is rather depressing, but there is some really positive work going out there, so I think we need to highlight that as well. Say, look, there is the progression there, and the works are completed in terms of little theatre and hippodrome nearly done as well.
That's fair.
I think you're right there, Nadine. The hippodrome has come on well and they've almost completed the work, but our concern is not the hippodrome, it's the Muni. That is our concern in Colne. That is a concern to the Colne people. And we need it to be absolutely right, because people will come in and they will say, well, what have they done? Like Councillor Whip says, you know, there's this wrong, there's that wrong, they should have done this, shouldn't have done that, you know. The hippodrome has come on nicely and we're happy with that, but we are talking about the Muni. That is our concern, and the market.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously Philip has kind of given us a bit of background in the sense that, you know, as elected members and also the officers, we did not know that there was an overspend. Obviously somebody has been authorising the overspend somewhere, and there is an internal investigation going on with it, you know, the internal audit and, you know, reporting and the mechanism, and hopefully, you know, we'll make those processes a bit more robust to ensure that this doesn't happen again. And we're not big enough authority to take a hit like this, 700k. We're not like the likes of the Leeds or the Manchesters, where you can, you know, you can take the hit if you will. That is £700,000 is a huge amount of money. You know, we've got to make even further savings to come the next financial year budget setting. So it's really important, you know, in my view, that, you know, people find some kind of efficiency and some maybe re-engineering within the levying up funds that we received. And I think we should. I know there's an election period happening on Tuesday, but I think we should still contact the levying up department, levy DLUC, asking for, you know, putting our case forward and asking for additional funding. Whether we get that or not, that's a, you know, different matter. But, you know, if we don't ask, you know, we won't know. So I personally think that, you know, we should request that additional funding and try to get that done as soon as possible. And then obviously, you know, we will have a bit of a report back, maybe in the next couple of months, to see, you know, where things went wrong and stuff. Councillor Iqbal, do you have a seconder for your proposal?
I didn't propose anything.
Do you propose anything? Okay. Because the thing is, we need to, like Councillor Rose said, you know, we need to, you know, complete this, and we will complete this, but it's just, you know, we've got to find the funding. Damien?
Yeah, I think we've already had some preliminary considerations with DLUC, whether or not there is scope in the funding, and we'll continue to do that. I know there's a next round of funding, so I'm not quite sure exactly where they are, probably influenced by the political environment that we're in at the moment. With regard to re-engineering, that was one of the first questions we asked, whether or not there was underspend on other parts of the Lough's projects to finance this, and we will continue to do so. You mentioned the fact that this is going to be a
a serious financial consideration that will have to be financed moving forward. And when we come to the budget working group item in a few minutes, I'll be strongly recommending that budget working group, as we've had discussions with Councillor Whip, that it commences sooner rather than later, much earlier than last year, because financial resilience and the medium-term financial plan is what we've got to really focus on. Okay, the revenue budget for this year might be intact. However, let's not rest on our laurels, and this year we have to make sure we've got more due diligence, more consideration of the issues that we're managing in year, but more importantly, we've got to really manage the risk moving forward. And as everyone around the table understands, the capital programme is really one under the spotlight.
Thank you. Okay. Councillor Wick.
Chairman, I'm going to make a further plea for us to fund the Appendix B works, and I just pick out various bits of it. The brass rail to raise height to meet current legislation. So presumably, if we don't raise the height to meet current legislation, the balcony cannot be used. There's been considerable balcony repairs, and part of the cost is redecorating the areas that have been ripped apart to do those repairs. Upgrade fire resistance of stage, decorating the additional areas affected by structural repairs. These are decorative items, but if you rip the building apart, you need to give it a lick of paint, and so I don't see that we can leave the job unfinished. Now, if we end up internally borrowing just £250,000 in terms of borrowing costs, that's about £12,500 a year. 12.5. So in the scheme of £900,000 to collect food waste, or £300,000 to bail Lancashire County Council out for the transfer of services, it is peanuts. And I would plead with colleagues, let's get this finished. I appreciate trying to get funding from elsewhere, and we should do that. But if the work goes to a point and then stops, it's going to cost us in terms of lost income, because it won't reopen. And if it doesn't reopen, there's no punters, there's no money on the door. It's another loss. So we're just compounding the problem. And as I say, I think we've got to bite the bullet. I would add to the potential funders to see whether Town Council might assist. But I think that's another conversation that we can have. If we stop the job now, then it's going to be mothballed.
Okay, so we've got a proposal there. All those in favour?
Can I register my against?
You can.
Against? Against?
I want my against registered.
Abstentions?
Thank you.
Okay. Next item is the performance update.
Not today.
Yeah, happily move the report. Just a quick point, I think there are some major improvements. I think David was going to, as kind of simplified a little bit more, I think, from last time. I think you were saying you were going to, some of the amber ones should have been in green, and the red ones should have been amber, that kind of thing. The only thing I would say is on Pendle Edge Trust, it gives reasons, for figures, figures that that people are still underusing some of the services. And I think it's really important that Pendle Leisure Trust does up its game a little bit, especially the swimming, tries to bring in more people, engages with the schools, trying to bring in more school children to use the services, and that brings us extra funding, and it makes the centres more sustainable. Councillor Stone.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just ask a question to Damon through you. This performance update, we've talked a lot about financial resilience in this meeting and the public base moving forward. That measure is rated as amber, and I appreciate that you're time bound in terms of when you make that assessment. Is this a point in time assessment, or is it forward looking, or is it backward looking? And so my question is, do we feel that actually financial resilience, considering it is such a huge challenge to the council, that measure ought to be read?
I think in terms of it was probably read a year ago, and then with the additional funding that helped us to set the budget for 24-25, it probably moved to amber. However, if we do not identify different funding streams to support the waste agenda and other issues that might come on track, then when we do our medium-term financial plan review, which again is time limited, and I talk about August being that time when we'll have our first look at 25-26, 26-27, then it may well revert to red. But at the timing of the report, that is what we believed the position was.
Thank you. Councillor Tomlin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, if you just look at paragraph 12, that's the major planning application determined on time. We are 100% for a considerable number of months now. So I'd just like to congratulate Neil and the team in the planning department for continuing that great service. It's a real credit to them. Yeah.
Councillor.
Yeah. Echo the point in terms of Pendle Leisure Trust. I think we've been saying that for years in terms of performance of the Pendle Leisure Trust. When you look at last year, 22-23, it uses 23-24. Sorry. The number of people attending is down to 4,000 visits a year, which is a massive number. And definitely I agree they do need to up the game. In terms of customer services, again, it's the same old story. I think, I know we've been having discussion a little bit and continue to do so. I think we need to continue applying pressure in terms of the targets they've got in terms of answering calls within the period agreed. And again, not meeting the target.
Can I speak up on sickness? I mean, you mentioned about the staff survey that staff obviously quite rightly are overworked and underpaid. I would echo that. But just in terms of sickness, I mean, it says there's work being done, but are these long-term sicknesses, or because I assume they're clearly having an impact on the services that are affected, and what we're doing as a management team to address that?
David.
Through you, Chair. I think first of all, you're right. Long-term sickness, mainly in David Walker's area, so you might want to elaborate more on that. We've had a number of sessions with HR looking at the interventions that are in play. We do believe we're doing what we can, and they are legitimate long-term sickness, but given the size of the workforce, you only need a few to actually hit this indicator and it will be reflected as red. We haven't got the numbers actually to consume and take into account some long-term sickness absences without sort of distorting whether we're hitting the indicator or not. So that's why it is red. It's not where we want to be, but they are legitimate long-term illnesses. David, do you want to elaborate on them? You've been managing that area in the fleet depot.
I don't think David needs to elaborate on it. I'm aware that David obviously would be number one in terms of the ranking because of the nature of the work that his department do, but it's what effect and what we're doing as a management team to help those colleagues that are picking up the slack, because local governments are renowned that if somebody's off sick, somebody else has to do the work.
Through yourself, Chair. Yeah, it is a huge challenge, Councillor Iqbal, we all know that. Within the report, we've tried to articulate some of the things to actually support people to avoid them going off in the first place, but then support colleagues as well. So make reference to the Employee Assistance Programme, mental health first aid, as health and wellbeing, and so on and so forth. Are these things perfect? Probably they're not. Can I actually sit here and say they've had X, Y or Z impact? Probably can't do that either. But as a management team, first of all, the point to make is we're incredibly committed to supporting all of our colleagues. We want to actually keep people in work and keep them healthy in work around some of these programmes. And we then try and support people if they are absent to actually get them back into work through these kind of things, occupational health support and so on and so forth. So I think as a management team we're committed to and we're doing everything we think we can reasonably do at the moment.
Thank you for that. Okay, those are all in favour? Okay. Next item is the local plan. Do you want to?
Feel
free.
Chairman, this is just the annual monitoring report for the council, which we're obliged to bring forward. Chairman, there's a lot of information in there, a couple of 100 pages almost of information. Just a couple of key, I think, points that I point out in there. Greenfield, brownfield, the rate of brownfield developments is at 62%. I think there's often an image of all we do is build on greenfield sites. There's an element of greenfield obviously, but 62 is the highest it's been for a while, Chairman. 78% of development is built within settlements, so there is clearly a need to get the local plan through to make that as far as we can 100% within settlements, Chairman. Housing numbers, we've built 285, we've completed 285 units for the last 2 years. I think that's likely to go down because of some of the larger housing sites are being finished. Chairman, empty homes, it's gone down from 1,600 in 2011 to 600, and that's steady. That's kind of a functioning housing market now. So we've gone from, obviously I was here when HMR was around and had huge problems with empty homes. It's now about an average of what you'd expect in any kind of functioning housing market, Chairman. House prices are going up, but mainly in the detached properties. That's reflective of, I think, what's going on nationally. But Chairman, one thing that we've not done, and it's reflected at page 105, is we're not completing a lot of industrial land now. That's gone down quite a lot, mainly because Longmire Phase 2 hasn't come along. It will probably go up next year because with Longmire Phase 1's, some of the units are going up there, but it does that's a barometer. We're completing houses at the moment, but new industrial land or new industrial developments for employments on the low side. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. Yeah, that's really important. Just that final point that you make about the industrial areas. The luxury industrial estate, phase 1 is pretty much complete, and it's really important for economic growth. And we do identify and try to expand in other areas. And I know West Craven is probably one of them. I'm sure Tom will touch on that. Councillor Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As noted in the report, it's a legal requirement to publish this, so I'd move with the recommendations there, Chair.
Second. Okay. All those in favour? Thank you. That's good. The next item is Household Support Fund. I move the report as set out. Within this Household Support Fund, it helps greatly with the local residents, and I think this will continue now up until the end of the year. So happily move the recommendation. Councillor Vick.
I was just going to second that, but just in terms of our shared agreement, where it says leader, you need to have the words on deputy leader.
Yes, Chairman, I agree with that, and I just picked up on that. I just wanted to give some thought, really, to paragraph 10, where the previous round, most of the funding went in direct payments, and there were £75 vouchers. and what we're being told here, the voucher award would only be £35. So the proposal is to target those direct payments on pensioners on council tax support. Now, I just want us to be conscious of that change, because it might be something that people are complaining to us as councillors that they're not getting the support they had previously. So rather than just sort of take it on the nod, I think it's incumbent on us to actually think about that a little bit. Is that the right thing to do?
We'll let the two of you ponder it.
Pardon?
So we'll let yourself and the leader ponder it.
Oh, great, thank you.
We're very confident in you both.
So, all those in favour? Sorry. Okay, the next item is Unit 2 Churchill Way, Hampshire Industrial Estate.
Move the recommendation.
Second that.
Yeah.
All those in favour? Next item is urgent repair works to chain wall Gisborne Street, Garage Side in Barnwell.
Chairman, I think the definition of urgent is perhaps a mutable thing. And Councillor Tom Whip's ward is gone out. So I took a picture of this wall back in March 2023, so it's sort of like, however many months ago, can't work it out, 15 months ago. And I've been bouncing up and down ever since, saying when we're going to get on and get this wall sorted out.
Yeah.
So it does need sorting, and it is expensive, but it's one of those things that you can't sort of escape. There's not some sort of wall fairies that are going to appear overnight and put this wall back together. Humpty Dumpty sat on top of it, and Pendle Council are going to have to rebuild it. Can I move the recommendation, Chairman?
Second that.
Yeah, Chair, just before you take the vote, I just want to seek some clarification. Paragraph 8 states that the council's investigation into the ownership suggests that the property owners on the land above the allotment are the owners of the wall. That's not us then, is it?
No.
Well, if you look at the map, the line A to B, C to D, E to F is where the retaining wall is, and everything to the left of that line, including the houses and the garage site, are on the raised land which the retaining wall is retaining. So the rest of it is an issue, but not Pendle Council's concern, not in Pendle Council's ownership. Sorry, that far. Has that answered your question?
Yeah, not quite, but okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else picked up on the same point, but it didn't make sense, not to me.
I don't get it.
Basically, this wall, I mean, it says in the report, just to clarify, point 8, which is what I think Councillor Zachary is kind of alluding to. Because it very clearly says the owners, the property owners on the land above the allotments are the owners of the wall and hence are liable for its repair and maintenance. So should that not be
The owners of the land above the
clarified?
allotments.
Yeah. So not
Yeah, which includes the council garage site.
Well, it's just council section that we're talking about.
This is just the council section.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's D to E there. C
D to
C to
Okay, right. I'm just going to bring Philip
C
in.
to D.
C to D.
Right, Councillor, I'm just going to bring Philip in just to clarify.
Thank you, Chair. It's unfortunate Neil's left. Neil's been kind of living and breathing this rather than myself. But my understanding is that the parties to the left of the line, the left of the wall, are responsible for its upkeep. So, as Councillor Whip said, the line A to B is the responsibility of the property owners, from property 2 to property 20. It's then PVC from C to D, where you can see the garage sites in the centre, and then it's property owners E to F 32 to Route 46 effectively.
So Chair, this cost is 54,000 is just for
C to D.
Have we got anything which is not spent in this meeting?
We've got working groups to set up.
Right, all those in favour of the recommendation? You did have insurance not covered. Right, okay, next item is working groups, so... Budget working group, yeah.
Could I suggest that we have 222 on both of these?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sure, that correct.
So in terms of the independent group, the budget working group is yourself and Councillor Hanif, and in terms of the asset transfer, it's Councillor Zafar-Ali and myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
In terms of our group, it's myself on both of them plus a question mark.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
To be informed.
Thank you, that's fine.
Can I give out names, please?
Sure.
Yeah, budget working group, the two accountants, Councillor Martin Stone and David Corbin Price. The asset transfer working group, I'll email Jane with the names.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, Damon.
Chair, just that I raised the point earlier, and it's a plea really to all councillors to engage earlier in the process. I know it's diary commitments, however, now that we've got these formed, I'd like to sort of work with the leads to chair some, table some dates so we can get on with this, because there's going to be some big decisions to be made, and I think the more time we have, the more chance you've got of getting officers to get the information back and make some key decisions. Thank you.
Totally agree with you, and considering the most spend we talked about earlier, obviously spending money here with the bike wall there, and also the £1 million that savings that we have to make for the next financial year. So it's really important that we kind of crack on with it. So the next item is Corn Market Working Group.
Can I nominate Councillor David Whitman and Councillor Mohammed Hanif?
Second that.
Okay. Item 17 is items from the committees.
Move the recommendation.
First one is the 67 Vernon Street. Sorry, land and joint to 67 Vernon Street.
Move the recommendation.
Give him a 54k seems about right. Give him our site.
Seconded?
Second that.
Thank you. All those in favour? That's carried. Next item is the forward plan.
No, okay.
Any comments? No?
Just one comment, Chairman. No, I'll leave it. Sorry.
Real.
Can I move item
Okay.
19?
So number 19 is exclusion of public and press.
Yeah.
So
Should we take them off?
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.